you check the children? Your little mad sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is what
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the horror show. I'm Ceceil Laird.
And Jaime Fuego here in person.
That's right, yes. He's finally got a little bit of time off from school. You only have a little bit left, right?
Two weeks until fall, and then fall is
it.
complete dunzo. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So yeah, guys, we are here to review a brand new horror movie that's actually in limited release this weekend, and unfortunately so, I believe, after watching it. I'm excited to actually get into this one after having a full day to think about it. Normally when we watch these movies, we do a review almost immediately afterwards.
Yeah, and I saw it Thursday night, and we're filming this on Sunday.
And I saw it Saturday, or did I see it Saturday or Friday? I saw it Friday. So I've had some time to think about it now, and I'm glad, because immediately afterwards, I didn't quite know what to think about it. But what we're talking about today is Neon's Cukoo. This is Neon's follow-up to their release Longlegs, and I don't mean follow-up as in it's a sequel. I mean it's their follow-up release after Longlegs just a few weeks ago. Longlegs did gangbusters in the box office, but it was released more widely than this one.
As did the Sydney Sweeney movie, did some decent money earlier this year too. So
yeah,
right? Neon's doing good, man.
Absolutely, but this one, we were enjoying the trailers for it. Again, it had some enigmatic advertisement, just like Longlegs did. I mean, not exactly like Longlegs, but still enigmatic enough that it was engaging. They didn't let you know. Honestly, I couldn't imagine a single person walked into this theater knowing exactly what they were going to get.
I certainly didn't. I actually went in thinking it was going to be one thing, and then it turned out to be something different. So props to that.
That's part of why I liked it. I went into it not knowing at all what to expect, other than someone's being chased at some point for some reason. But I liked what it ultimately revealed itself to be, right up my alley. You know what I mean?
Indeed. Something different, man. This, as far as the full-on reveal, without getting into too much of it, I hadn't seen this particular concept done before.
No, that's what I said afterwards. I thought, I tweeted something briefly saying that this is a unique concept in the horror genre that I can recall.
Oh, yeah.
Which I really liked. I suppose there's something that was spiritually kin to this that was released recently.
I'm trying to think of what you're hinting at without spoiling stuff.
Yeah. I'll write it down. But yeah. So let's while I write it down, you give your overall thoughts on Cukoo.
Yeah, overall thoughts. I was quite impressed with this, and this is another situation where the burden of expectation was hitting rather heavily, because, I mean, this was originally supposed to come out a few months ago, and then they pushed it to kind of give it some breathing room amongst a few other horror releases and stuff. And so, yeah, I think it went from early summer release to August when it finally is actually properly hitting theaters. But this gained so much buzz on the festival circuit, which they were priming in all of the, all of the trailers was giving all of the festival praise and stuff. And I mean, from an acting standpoint, I enjoyed it. Great to see Dan Stevens, right? Yeah, again, in some, I kept thinking Dan Simmons for a second. Dear Fuego, but yeah, Dan Stevens, man, he's interesting as a kind of what is his actual motivation and association with this family. The actor that plays Gretchen, I thought was great. Really solid performance.
Hunter Schafer.
Yep, Hunter Schafer. And so
I guess they like to be called actors now.
Yeah.
Technically, even actresses are actors.
Yep,
now.
Exactly. So. And that's what I was intending there. And so, yeah, very solid performance there. And I really liked it from a visual standpoint in the way that they manifest this almost like looping, kind of losing sense of time and space, which, I don't think that really spoils too much, because it's an interesting area that they're in, and there's certain, powers that will be revealed over the course of the film, I guess. So yeah, I dug this, man. I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, I very much did as well. I was happy that, I was engaged throughout, and I was sort of on my back foot the whole time, because I didn't know quite what was coming. It took me a bit to kind of understand what was happening, because we're introduced to that quote unquote mechanic of the movie, right? I put it in game terms, you know what I mean? That there is that mechanic of reverberative sounds and time-space disruption.
And it looks cool the way
they did it. Yeah, really cool. And we'll get to that in filmmaking, but yeah, this was a very unique and yet quite positive experience watching this film. I very much enjoyed it more than Longlegs. For a few different reasons, to be honest with you.
I did too. You know, both heavily hyped and both, prominent genre releases, by Neon of the Summer. And yeah, this one actually, lived up, at least for me.
And I won't keep referencing Longlegs throughout the thing. I know that's not the ideal thing to do, but it is the most recent sort of thing that was released by this same company that was also enigmatically advertised. And so, there are some ties there. And there are people making inevitable comparisons even without us.
Yeah,
so just giving our thoughts on it, so to speak.
Yeah, it's inevitable.
So yeah, the story is, again, we're going to try and keep this as spoiler free as we can. There are some things story wise we may need to mention, but we will keep it spoiler free. But yeah, this is about a family that is moving to a new home. In a new town, or it's not quite a new town, it's a hometown, right? And so we meet Hunter Schafer and her father and her father's new wife and their child, right? Their new her new sister, her half sister. Yeah. Even if she doesn't necessarily consider
she's
herself.
Not my sister.
Right,
she can't talk. She's effing weird.
Yeah, there's all this conflict built right up front, but that's nice, right? It's fleshing out the characters early on, and we like that.
And the family dynamic.
But yeah, so when they arrive, what's his nuts? What did you say? His
Dan Stevens.
Dan Stevens. Yes, thank you. I don't know why I can't keep it clear in my mind. The man that really made the last Kong movie the most entertaining thing. Yeah. He was the most entertaining thing about it.
And he was fun in Abigail too.
He was fun in Abigail. Yeah. So
I've dug him on. He's a rock. All kinds of stuff, going
solid.
All the way back to The Guest. I think he was in.
Mm-hmm. He plays German in this, and he does it very well. I thought, or at least to my Americanized ears.
And he plays it to laughs, at times as well, which is good. And there is a sprinkling of humor in the proceedings, which I did appreciate.
I love that. Your German is better than your father's.
A little speaking.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so it's nice, right? It's a simple story, but soon enough
you get some breadcrumbs.
Soon enough,
clues.
Yeah. What is her name again? Because he
Hunter?
No, the character's
Gretchen.
name. Gretchen, yeah, because he calls her Gretchen. But
and
Gretchen,
she's like, no, my name's Gretchen.
Gretchen is grappling with something, right? A personal thing that's gone on in the family. She's dealing with this. She's and we don't know quite the details, right? And that becomes a story point later, which I had an idea, but it was fun to see that play out.
There was one bit with the sister that pays off those phone calls really effectively.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that doesn't spoil it.
No. But it really does. And so, essentially, Gretchen starts to realize very quickly that that things aren't quite right. And it's funny too, because Dan Stevens and the other characters do a great job early on of being like, oh yeah, apparently he decided to bring his daughter too, and they're like, oh, I was like,
not even mentioned her.
She was not part of the plan at all. So they do really great world building and build up, like early on. This was a really well crafted film, in my opinion.
And there's some good mystery aspects about
Absolutely.
it as well. Trying to figure out, along with Gretchen, the real nature of what is going on. Because there's some family history at this hotel with Gretchen's father and like all the way back to her mother, and so and then the Dan Stevens character, and trying to figure out, as I mentioned in overall thoughts, the motivations of his character. He has a nearby like resort of sorts that he wants Gretchen to go work at, and yet she starts encountering some weird instances of just odd behavior from people staying there, and that's when stuff starts to unravel and unfold.
Well, and the first thing
intrigue builds a lot higher.
Yeah, one of the early occurrences was something featured in their full trailer when she's riding her bike, and that was an awesome scene. It was. So good. I was kind of bummed that they had shown it in the trailer, but
I thankfully hadn't seen it.
Yeah,
I was experiencing right there with Gretchen, dude. I'm like, is that a...
By the way, if you guys hadn't known, for our reviews, we don't lay footage over it. I'm sure you know that by now, but I always put a link to the trailer in the description box so you can pull up another window and have the footage going next to us if you really desire.
Yeah.
But it will spoil some things because Fuego didn't see that scene ahead of time, and
I
how
was so
effective
glad
was
that
it?
I was so
It
glad
was
that
so
I
good,
did.
right?
Oh,
When
man.
we saw it in the trailer, that's what made me
Yeah.
want to see the movie.
Oh, okay.
As I was watching the movie, I was like, oh, I remember the trailer now, and I was just waiting for it to happen, and I
it's
was like,
such a
it's executed so well.
And yet it's such a simple concept, but when a great idea,
Mhm.
simple as it may be, is just so effectively executed. Like, damn, dude,
100%.
it's great stuff.
So yeah, it's essentially what happens as things start to unravel around Gretchen, and how deep does it go for her, and how personal does it get for her?
Yeah, and the personal aspect is really kind of the fragmentation of her from this new family, because her father has obviously moved on from Gretchen's mother, new wife, new child, all this other stuff, and the child has a disability, without getting into too much stuff, although that is a little bit of a hint about some of the things that are later revealed, which is interesting, and it does add some intrigue and some additional aspects to it. But yeah, just the escalation of tension over the course of everything being revealed and unraveling, and the curtain being pulled just a little bit further back, especially when she gets involved with somebody who is curious about some of the same things that she is really trying to wrap her head around as well, and while walking on eggshells, trying to be vague, because there's a ramp up in the back half of this movie about what is actually going on, and it's quite cool.
And there's some good scares. I gotta say, there are some good scares in this. Someone asked after our review of Longlegs, like, what? Or no, I think it might have been after my review of Oddity. They're like, because I said it's not as scary as some people were saying. Some people were saying Oddity was the scariest movie of the year. I just
saw
didn't
that
find
too.
it that scary.
Yeah,
it was
I
a good
really
movie,
liked
but it just wasn't that scary.
Yeah.
I think this had more moments of scares for
I
me
agree.
than a lot of the films I've seen this year.
Yeah, the moment we talked about earlier.
A couple of others.
Just a moment ago.
A moment after an accident, I will say that.
Yeah.
That got me like a mother, like, and
I also like the fact
I
that
felt there was a lot of like, I get creeped out, especially when people are being chased. Like the feeling you get when your main character is like clambering up a ladder and the thing, whatever it is right behind them and like swiping at their feet.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of tension I was feeling in a lot of points in this, which I love.
Yeah.
I love that kind of tension. Some people might liken it to It Follows sort of tension.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean?
And actually a little bit with a visual aesthetic too that comes
True.
into play later on.
True.
Yeah.
That's kind of the overall of the story and all we can really say about it. I mean, the easy segue into acting is Hunter Schafer was incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. Everyone did a great job in this. Like, I don't think there was a weak link in the bunch. I think the fact that it was partially foreign, like it takes place in like out of the country somewhere in Europe.
I'm trying to remember if it was like Switzerland or Germany. I mean,
I'm
he
not
was
sure, but
speaking
it's
German. But
and then
I think it
someone
was Germany, now that I
that's
think
French shows up at some point.
It's obviously a place that sees its fair share of European international
exactly,
travelers
and so it felt the movie kind of felt a little worldly in that way, and I really kind of appreciate that. Yeah, exactly. So acting wise though, because it was foreign, we had a lot of different cultural representation, and I thought it was all done very well. So I dug the acting in this big time, the little girl especially. A lot of these movies can hinge on whether or not the kid is like salvageable or talented, you know what I mean? And this one was talented.
Yeah, and the young girl had great chemistry with Hunter, whether it was scenes of affection or like just kind of standoffishness, because sometimes with siblings,
typical siblings,
you love them, you hate them, or you're
especially
irritated by
half
them,
siblings. That can be a very tense situation.
Yeah. And even the family, that the new mom that obviously Hunter has some issues with, I thought that she balanced that she wasn't quite like evil stepmother of sorts, but you could tell that there is like a little bit of a rift there and stuff. And I also really liked, I guess that would have been more so in the story aspect, but I liked the fact that Hunter was a musician. I really dug that aspect.
Music actually
about
played
the
a bigger
man.
role in the film than I was
expected.
waiting to
get into
I kind of
hit that.
Well, why don't we just go ahead? We'll segue into the
Hunter is a
music
musician,
aspect,
and one interesting thing that I noticed throughout the movie about the production design, and this can kind of go along with the music, is the fact that there was almost like a technological disparity in this movie, in the fact that they're using smartphones at times, but yet in other areas they've got the old tube TVs and things like that.
Well, he uses an old school recorder.
Yeah, and the tape player that she said when she's making these phone calls to an answering machine, it's an old school answering machine with a cassette tape. So maybe those are things I'm still trying to understand the subtext of, you know, with having that be so very obviously emphasized. But yeah, I dug the fact that she was a musician. Her friends are sending her tapes that she's listening to, playing bass and stuff along
Audio
with,
played a
and
big role in this film,
Yes,
and
it did.
I absolutely love that. I
Especially-
love that they made the audio a
Yeah.
character in and of itself.
And I
essentially.
love how headphones are used as a protectionary manner in the third act. I thought that was really clever and really cool. And the music that she's playing is kind of, and even some of the score, it's kind of like a dark garage indie rock with a little bit of synthy little tinges and stuff. I dug the music, whether it was, you know, like actual score or just, you know, other songs that were utilized, including in one driving sequence. That song was dope. I mean, yeah, I was into the music in this.
Yeah, one of the things I loved, and this just occurred to me, I meant to mention it earlier around the story area, but the title is way more pertinent than you expect going
Especially
into this.
the one scene that
Everything.
yeah.
I mean, there's so much about it that's pertinent.
There's that
It's
bit of
awesome.
exposition which is given about the nature
I love
the
it.
bird
Yeah.
that it's named after, that the film is named after.
Exactly,
So it's not, it is that multiple meanings sort of title that can be interpreted like Cukoo going crazy, you know, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest I immediately thought of, and yet it wasn't as much about that. It's a factor, you know.
This was the movie I was thinking of. Like a kind of a spiritual cousin to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I can see that 100%, man. But yeah, music did play a part, and it was
both
it was
score
effectively
and
used.
sound design.
So the
Especially
sound
design.
Once you understand, I guess, the nature of the threat, of sorts, without getting too much into it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good way to put it. Let's get into the actual filmmaking. I mean, so interesting.
Second feature
very
for this
indie,
director.
but so fucking interesting visually. And he makes director
I believe so.
Okay,
Yeah. It's a German director. His second feature, his
Okay, cool.
previous
I just
film.
wanted to make sure I didn't get that wrong.
I think you were saying
Luz is
Luz.
probably- yeah.
It's on Shudder. I really am gonna make the effort to check it out sometime in the near future because I'm
Yeah, 'cause
curious
this-
about
yeah,
how the
especially after
style is
seeing
adapted
this,
and
yeah.
developed and whatnot.
It's kind of like watching When Evil Lurks and someone going back and being able to see Terrified for the first time. You know what I mean? Maybe it'll
both
be
so good.
yeah, maybe it'll be a similar experience. So I'm excited to go back and check out Loose now as well. But yeah, so let's get into the filmmaking portion. I mean, the actual the way the film was presented was gorgeous, but I think again, going back to what you were alluding to earlier, certain scenes were really in conjunction with the sound design were presented in a very specific way.
And
you know what I mean?
Just as disoriented as
Disorienting, but it was
man.
cool
Yeah.
because like the first time it happens, you're like, what the fuck?
It's where she's
You're like,
there
was
with
it
the
an
bass.
editing mistake? And then like, no, and then like you're like, okay, what is going on? And then you're like just locked in. You know what I mean? And so all of it worked together so harmoniously. It was really impressive to me, both the actual cinematography and the audio.
Yeah, the cinematography, it was definitely enhanced because of the fact that they picked such a cool spot to film. Like where this resort is located, you've got these beautiful, like almost, I don't know, forestry, mountains, and everything like that. And yeah, I mean, the nighttime stuff was awesome, whether it was her with, you know, riding the bicycle home, or later on there's two people leaving in a car from the resort and stuff. And so all that stuff was very effectively shot, added tension because of the way that they did it, and just enough light to add the proper element of scare.
Agreed. And then effects. I mean, the effects were really cool. There wasn't a ton to speak of, but it was more makeup effects than anything else. But they
Some
didn't.
of which you see in the trailer with her like head and, you know,
they didn't shy away
injuries
from the gore when there was gore, which you know sometimes was just injuries and stuff. But all of it again was great. I didn't feel like anything was lacking. I didn't feel like anything was cut away from. I feel like it was all presented exactly as it should have been presented. And that's the funny thing, right? I rarely come out of a movie and I'm like, what did I really think of that? Because like I thought I liked it, but I didn't know. So I'm glad I had this time to process it, because ultimately I was really happy with a lot of the aspects of this film. I don't remember many aspects that I didn't like about the film. I mean, some people might come in and say it devolves into a more generic slasher-like scenario.
in the third act.
Right.
Little bit.
But I don't agree with that sentiment if they say that. I could see why they'd say that, but I wouldn't agree with that personally. So that's what I'm saying. I feel like there might be some critics that feel that way, but I think ultimately you know, I really like this because it's new and it's so well presented and so well executed. It's if I had made this movie, I would be proud as fuck. Let's just say it
There you
that
go.
way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I was impressed with it too, man. And, you know, even beyond the burden of expectation, as I always like to say, I still quite dug this. And I especially enjoyed the lore. Now, maybe one of the few gripes I could say is it does get a little exposition heavy in the third act, trying to kind of get your head wrapped around the full extent of what's going on, because it's pretty heavy shit. But I mean, yeah, I dug the fact that they really just thought that in-depthly about what is really going on, what certain people are trying to get accomplished, and just the sheer weirdness of it. It does kind of veer into scientific realms in some essences, and that doesn't really divulge too much, but I enjoyed that aspect. I thought it was fascinating, and I really dug the reveal of the interconnectivity of everything once they really got to it. And I mean, it just amped things up. There is a little more gunplay than I was expecting in the third act.
Yeah,
but,
that's fine.
But I dug it, man. You know?
It worked really well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, guys, this is very much worth your time.
Amen.
I think it's actually worth supporting in the theater if you can find a screening nearby. Yeah. Definitely go check out Cukoo. It's not going to be in the theaters very long, I'm guessing, but it's worth your time and money for sure.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to migrate to Shudder at some point, but I could be mistaken about that because, you know, so many of these, they have their limited theatrical runs and then they show up on a streamer shortly thereafter. But yeah, support it in the theater. I second Cecil's notion on that.
Yeah, and so there you go, guys. That's our thoughts on Cukoo. I really hope you guys give it a try. Let us know in the comments down below, what did you think of it? Try and keep it spoiler free, at least for the first first week or so. But yeah, I'd be very curious to know y'all's thoughts, if you agree with us or if you thought, for whatever reason, you weren't a big fan. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel the way that you do. We greatly appreciate it. Until next time, I've been Ceceil Laird.
And gracias, I've been Jaime and Fuego.
And stay tuned because tomorrow, or Tuesday rather, we're going to be putting up our reaction to the full trailer for It's Me, Billy 2. So we will see you then. Yeah. And remember, guys, stay scared.